Meet Codename Goose, your on-machine open-source AI agent, built to automate your tasks. Codename Goose is an intelligent and autonomous agent capable of handling complex tasks thanks to its core features. Connect with apps and tools you already use with extensions. Built on the Model Context Protocol, you can connect to extensions like GitHub, integrate JetBrains IDEs, access Google Drive, or build your own custom integrations for Goose. For a curated list of extensions, visit our docs. With a wide range of compatible large language model providers, you can choose and integrate your preferred model. You can also run Goose as a desktop app or through the command line interface using the same configurations across both. You can think of Goose as an assistant, ready to take your instructions and do the work for you. Able to handle a wide range of tasks across various engineering domains. Here are examples of tasks Goose has helped people with already. Goose has helped dive into a new project in an unfamiliar coding language, conduct code migrations such as Ember to React or Ruby to Kotlin, increase code coverage, and even generate unit tests for a feature, and much more. To get started using Goose right away, check out our quick start and be the first to know about upcoming features by joining our community.
I'll follow through. Here's what Goose can do for you. Build the bug, extend your flow, edit code and run the show. Search fast with RGY, globs to find the files just right. Propose a diff, await your cue. No change lands till you approve. Here's what Goose can do for you. CLI server, desktop too. Rust to TS, I'll see it through. Here's what Goose can do for you. Add routes, action on the line. Generate open FP fine. Wire the UI, test it clean. Type checks pass the build, stay green. Schedule jobs, recipes run. Pause, resume, or run now, done. Here's what Goose can do for you. Automate the boring new. Tasks on time, reliable crew. Here's what Goose can do for you. Enable tools when you need more.
Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wild Goose Case. And today we're talking about MCP-UI. And I'm super excited. We have a full house today. I am going to bring everyone up. First, we have Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, y'all. What's going on?
Hey, and Andrew is a design engineer here at Block. Welcome. Next, we have Liad, one of the creators of MCPUI. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, and he does AI at Monday.com. And last but not least, we have Ito. Hey, Ito. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Of MCPUI. And he's also at does AI at Monday.com. So welcome, everybody. Ooh, the chat is popping today. Hey, Max. Hey, guys.
Hello, everyone. Introducing myself as I'm back. Nice to be here. We have a very exciting topic today, MCP-UI, the future of agentic interfaces. And as everybody mentioned, this is basically a full house. A lot of interesting conversations today. Hopefully we get some predictions or some insights into what the future is going to look like. But I'm really, very excited today. So I'm going to let Andrew, Ido, and Leah just introduce themselves before we get right into the meat of things.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Andrew. This is my second live stream. I hung out with Roselle last week doing the Great Goose Off. I'm a design engineer at Block and working on Goose and other AI-related agentic things. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Ido.
Love that.
Hi, everyone. So this is my first time at Goose, but a big fan. Yeah, thank you, Auntie. We're working on created the MCPUI and then worked with Liad on Git MCP. So we're in the MCP space for a while. Well, 3 months, for as long as MCP is around. Right now I'm doing AI at Monday, previously at Palo Alto Networks.
Nice.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Liad, previously in Shopify. I'm working on MCPUI with Ido and AI at Monday. We're also co-moderating the UI community work group in the FC committee. And super excited to be here.
I'm super excited. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Ebony Lewis, and I'm a developer advocate here at Block alongside Ace. And I'm super excited. I kind of want us to just dive in. So what I want us to start with is I've been thinking when it comes to Liad and Ito, What was like the aha moment you had that made you realize that text-based interface was dead, essentially, and that you needed to up the ante a little bit? What pushed you guys to this?
I think just working with text. It's just, I think everyone did something, had a bunch of text, and were like, this is terrible. Why do I have to type all of that? And kind of rage quit, ChatGPT. I think kind of realizing that text isn't the way to really go forward when you're talking about the agentic future. I mean, it's nice for early adopters. It's nice for people that are already very technical, but not for my mom, for instance. It's just not the right way to consume content. So I think going from that and kind of realizing, okay, why is the internet built the way that it does? Why are things so complicated in UI? Why do we need simplification? It was kind of a natural step to come and say, let's take what's good about the web, which is UI that is very focused on what you need and snippets of what you want to do, and kind of embed that in that agentic flow where AI can kind of enhance your experience instead of just kind of pushing you towards the browser whenever you need to do anything more complicated.
Yeah, and I think more than that, when we spoke to people a few months ago, and if the skeptics around AI and agents, their point was that text is not the natural way to do things. Even if I want to show you something, then I probably won't tell you about it, but point at it or say, yeah, this is what I want. So the UI, we have like more than a decade of a human interface, like human targeted interfaces on the web that are built and perfected for the human limitations, for the human cognitive limitations and needs. And it doesn't make sense that agents will make us get rid of all of that, right? It doesn't make sense that this decade of experience will go away. So embedding these kind of chunks of fragmented experiences inside of agents seems like the natural way forward. And more than that, when you start to look at what big agents or big chats are trying to implement first-party UI. So if you search, I don't know, for hotels, then you'll get these hotel cards in ChatGPT that are generated by ChatGPT. And it makes you think that, first of all, the providers of the world, like the data providers of the world, they wouldn't want their identity to get lost in this flow, right?
Yeah.
They want just to expose the data. And so they want the identity to be preserved. And on the other hand, chat cannot generate all of the possible UIs in the world, right? You have seat selection in a venue and booking a doctor appointment and check-in flow in an airline. All these really complex UIs that you have providers that are domain experts in creating them. So this can't go away. This knowledge cannot go away.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. I've been a huge fan of the web for the longest time for one particular reason, simply because regardless of the device that you have, you can almost always access the web, whether it's your smartwatch, whether it's your tiny phone, whether it's your PlayStation, at some point smart fridges. And we've moved to a point where we now have AI agents basically being used by everybody. And I think it's very interesting to see web components starting to get into, this experience as well. I'm curious, is this going to be tied to just web components, or could it be literally any type of UI? And as we dive into that answer, what exactly is MCP-UI, and how does it come into the space to then change how we interact with agents?
Yeah. So I think MCP-UI is two things, right? And at the higher level, it's just a protocol. How do we pass UI over MCP? So that can be, for now, one of the ways it's just to take an existing web app, take its URL, and put it in an iframe. Another one is to kind of take raw HTML, render it. Another one is remote DOM. But ultimately, it can be any kind of way to describe UI that the host can agree to render in some way. So, if we're talking mobile, maybe it will be something, with the mobile component library. Maybe it can be something that is generative based on general description. I mean, MCP-UI doesn't limit any of that. So actually, part of our roadmap is also going in a more generative UI kind of way to do it. And I think Goose is also very interested in stuff like that. So probably even collaborate on it. And the other part of MCP-UI is just the SDK, which is the easiest way to actually implement the protocol.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you've been a fan of the web because everyone can access it. And I think one of the core principles in MCP-UI is that until now, you had the browser and you could browse to websites, right, using the browser. And if you as a company, you would build a website, you know that everyone will get to it using a browser. But now you have the agents that they're not just another way to access the web. They're going to be the way to access the web, right? Because like Ido says, my mother as well, she's a fan of ChatGPT, and if she can do more things with the agent, with the assistant, she will do them with the assistant. She won't browse to the doctor's website to book an appointment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so MCPUI's philosophy is that the web, the activities, the experiences, they need to be fragmented and they need to be communicated to those assistants, because complex web apps or complex websites, they're not going to be present in the coming years. No one will browse to a complex web app just to do something. So the core philosophy of MCPUI is bridging this gap. Yeah.
I love that. I love how inclusion was so important in it, because I thought about my mom too. She's not going to these websites either. She's straight using ChatGPT or Copilot, having them do the research for her and stuff like that. I think it would be great if we lead into a demo now and see it. I want to see it in action. So Andrew, I'm going to bring your screen up.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to drive for Ido and Liad, but we're going to start with this prompt here of I want to buy blue shoes. And I'm using Goose Claude for Sonnet right now to do the tool calling, just as a FYI. So yeah, here we go. A bunch of shoes came back, and right now Goose is giving us a bit of a summary. And I'll hand it over to Ido or Liad. Do y'all want to kind of walk us through what we're looking at here?
I'll just note that you can already see the difference between the wall of text that you got afterwards and the nice way of using the UI. Yeah. Ido, you want to go?
Exactly. When you go to the bottom, then you see that huge list. That's what you get today when you go to any of the big providers and try and shop for something. And once you get that, you just have to go to the browser and kind of open each tab one by one and start browsing. That's not a realistic way to do something like e-commerce. So what you have here is instead get that nice catalog going. And an important part here is that this is actually Shopify UI. Goose didn't actually implement any of that, any of those components. So Shopify gets to keep its brand, it gets to keep its experience, and everything is as it would be in your browser, but in line with the agentic flow of purchasing something.
You can note, by the way, now that you open, like you expanded and collapsed this cart, you can note that the chat adapted itself. Even though this is an external UI, the chat adapted itself to the height of the UI, which really allows this streamlined experience of the UI chunks with the chat. The flexibility of what to do with the UI chunks is at the host's hands, not in the UI. The Shopify in this case just provides the parts, but the host decide what to do with them.
Yeah, and I think when Andrew is clicking around and stuff are happening, that's like the other portion of not just rendering stuff, which is one end of it, but the other one is how do agentic flows work? I mean, one way is to say, okay, I have this catalog and I will type, I want to buy shoe number 1 or shoe number 2, but that's still a bad experience. So what MCP-UI enables is kind of that nice click feel of saying, I want a particular shoe, I'll click on the particular shoe that I want. What will happen in the background is that there's actually a tool call over MCP being triggered that fetches the next UI component. In that way, you can actually create really complex flows that simulate clicks on websites. And beyond clicks and follow-up tool calls, you can do even cooler stuff like sending prompts to the agent. So what we're seeing here is not just a way to, you can actually communicate, click on a button, it will send an API call because it's a web app back to the backend. But getting that connection between the UI, the agent, and the host brings you to a whole new place of, do I, as an app developer, let's say I'm a developer for Shopify, and I want to develop something that integrates with a calendar. Do I need to actually develop an API integration with Google Calendar? Or can I use something like MCP-UI, send a prompt, by clicking on, schedule, send a prompt over to Goose and say, I want to schedule something on the user's calendar. The agent already knows what calendar the user has. I mean, it could be, it can even be something that is Microsoft based. I don't know, Hotmail. I don't need to know that as the provider, but the agent does. So it kind of opens up this whole new world of interactions.
And
let me demo a couple of those little bits real quick. The idea of like the agent having context and being able to like interop between multiple different tools and servers themselves. So let's pretend that like I'm going to be flying somewhere and I'm ready to pick my seat. This is kind of a tried example, but like I think it works to demonstrate kind of what's going on here. So I'm going to say like, help me pick my seat on my flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to SF. And, let's just assume that it was already booked. Like this is kind of like a bit of a, fake thing, right? But the idea here is that the tool that I've built here knows that we're going from Charlotte to San Francisco, and we have the ability to interact with it and pick a seat. So I'm going to pick an aisle seat. I don't like middle seats. Click confirm, and that notifies the client that the seat was selected. And then this is an example of one particular UI like frame tracking state, right? I think there's kind of this like interesting design discussion to be had around like how much state do we want to keep track in the UI itself inside of that frame versus like how much state do we let the agent manage for us. But now that this is here, it recognizes like, okay, Charlotte and San Francisco are in context. Well, like what's the weather in both places? And I'm not going to spell it perfectly on purpose and also by accident, right? And so what now is happening is Goose is going to go look up the weather for me in Charlotte and also the weather for me in San Francisco. And so I have to specify that. So I think that's this example of being able to like pass information across different tools and use them. And then one really interesting thing that we were really inspired over here at Square by the work that was done by Shopify with Storefront and kind of thinking through what's the future of like agentic commerce. And so recently we were kind of building some prototypes to explore what that could look like. So, keeping this like travel theme in mind, we know the weather, we picked our seat. Like, what about some food? So let me find an old prompt here that I don't have to type off the top of my head. So when I get there, I want some tacos. So show me some options. So the idea here is that we'd be able to tap into our seller, user base and understand what Square sellers are in San Francisco, what taco shops are there, and we can explore the details of these restaurants. And so, this is a good example of how we found some rough edges. It kept calling tools and over again. So let's actually click on one of these here. Look at this one, the San Francisco Chacharia. So this is the details about the place. All of this is synthetic data. I used an agent to create a script to create a bunch of JSON for me to basically mock all this up. We can view the menu. We can say, it looks like we're not doing tacos anymore. We're into like an Italian theme. Something happened there. Whatever. So we'll add some things to our cart. This is very similar to the UX flow of shopping for shoes, but instead we're going to find something to eat. And then we can modify our order, place the fake order here, and then we get like a cute little receipt. The interesting thing about all this, right, is like I didn't say I want to find something in San Francisco. It knew that from the very beginning. But like this brings up questions for me, like how do we manage this problem of like race conditions or things getting confused, right? Like I can press place fake order multiple times now. And like, by the way, no money is being transacted here. It's all fake. It's going to be super clear. But like, what are ways that we need to guard against edge cases? And how do we do server-side validation with like agent-side validation? And what do y'all think about that?
So I think an important point that you raised, and we saw it only even in the Shopify demo and in this demo, is that now an interesting design question is, what do we do with in our service backend, and what do we leave to the LLM to remember, right? For example, if you would have updated the cart, the Shopify cart, if you just, I don't know, change the number of items, it would update the backend and would just notify, like here, if you open and you do like one, so you can see that it just notifies the LLM, but it doesn't rely on the agent to do the actual update call, right? It updates it in Shopify's backend. And I think it's a really good question where you draw the line. And I think that's a question that in the future all of the app developers will have to deal with. It's not, you don't have control now on the compute. You have control only on on the UI you expose and some of the backend. So your question about like double checkouts or triple checkouts, that's something that can be either solved in instructions that are being sent to the tool, to the LLM, but then you rely on the LLM, and obviously with some guardrails in your backend. But these are exciting questions to answer. These are exactly like the new frontiers that this kind of new fragmented UI opens.
And so just so I'm clear, what's happening here is when we click this plus or minus, we see a notify message. So in the SDK, we have the on UI action. So what y'all are doing is you're basically dispatching the type of notify. And is that basically in response to a successful post to some API that you have?
Yeah, actually, you can. I don't know if you have the MCP storefront webpage open, but you can see there the events that are being sent, because Goose is capturing the tool calls, but some clicks, some events are sending tool calls, and some are here, for example. So you can see that this is sending a tool call, but if you go, for example, for the cart, to the cart section, and you open it, and so this sends a notify, which is this is exactly where the app developer needs to decide, what am I relying on the LLM to do? And in multi-step flow like commerce, you want the LLM to decide, like the agent to decide that it's going to the next step. But when you just update a cart, you don't necessarily need the LLM to do it. You just need it to know that it happens.
Yeah, real quick, I want to take us back before we start to dive into some of these things. And the first thing I want us to first of all recognize is how amazing this is, before we even get into the technicalities of it. And it's the same sentiment that is also shared in the audience. We have Angie, Angie is making this, makes us smile. Wow, whoa. Me, I personally have so many questions. But before we even get into that specifically, the audience also has a couple of questions, right? And on this call, we have both the developers of MCP-UI and also one of the adopters of MCP-UI from Goose, which is like Andrew, Andy, that side from us. I'm going to go through a couple of questions from the audience before I also even start into my own questions. And then we can from there just dive into, because I'm sure we'll probably run out of time if we stay here just talking about everything, because it's so exciting. So I think the first question that we have is, would this UI get to a point where either agents or users are starting to have like custom experiences that are designed for them from the agent, for example?
So I think that's a very interesting question. One of the things that we are exploring in MCP-UI is the question of when we pass that UI back to the agent, does the agent just, or the host, does the host just render it in an iframe and treat it as a black box? Or do we want the agent to be involved? So one of the things that I've been circulating around in a few adopters actually of MCP-UI is the question of, maybe I should take, let's say it's raw HTML. Maybe we should take the entire block of raw HTML, pass it on to the agent, and have the agent modify whatever it wants. So for example, it can be stuff that are simple. Maybe I don't want to see a particular word. Maybe I want to translate it into my own language and it's not translated in the app. Maybe I want different colors because of accessibility issues, or 1,000 reasons why something would change, and I kind of need to trust the agent to fill those gaps for me. Another example is, if I need to fill out a form, but the agent already knows the answer, do I need to actually answer it myself? So it's a very interesting question. It obviously becomes more complicated as we put agents in, because they're not perfect, because they're not deterministic. Like, even if we let them actually manipulate HTML, maybe it will be broken when it's actually rendered. Maybe the response that will be sent back to the host, to the backend, of the UI, won't work. So there's a lot of trade-offs around it. I think once we have more confidence and trust in agents and LLMs in general, these kind of will become clearer. Another direction there is not only to ask, do we need stronger models? It's also, is raw HTML the right method to transfer data to the agent and let the agent edit it? So for instance, maybe we should do something more decorative with XMLs, or maybe it should even be like more of a general description and have the agent generate something. It's a very interesting topic. I think it'll probably go on for a long time until we actually figure out the correct way to do it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's like the exciting thing about this all being new, that the possibilities are endless and it's just on iteration, just us testing it out and seeing what works and what doesn't work. We have another question that I think is really important, and it's around security. Max was saying when he initially started to look at MCP-UI, the biggest concern was like security and injection, and wanting to know like, how are we thinking of how we're going to handle this? Will the security part be more on the agent itself, or the browser does a lot of it? Have you guys thought more into this?
Yeah, so the first principle in MCP-UI is that the UI, especially when it comes and embedded as iframes, it should be secured and isolated from the hosting environment. The whole idea is that instead of the providers need to send like raw UI that the host just need to trust, it can be rendered in a secured and isolated environment. So that's one principle of MCP-UI. We're also exploring directions like a remote DOM, where the UI is rendered in a different window or worker, and only the events are being communicated to the host. But we know that third-party code is always a risk, and we're trying to minimize it as much as possible. So currently, secured iframes are the way to do it, and they communicate only with post messages to the host.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
sorry, continue.
So just to clarify, in this demo, like what we're actually seeing now is a sandboxed iframe that has no access to the parent. Like whatever is going on within that iframe cannot access top level. The only way to communicate, as Liad mentioned, is post messages. So the other end of it is really what can they communicate and what happens with follow-ups, but that's not different than any prompt. Really.
This like actually led into a question that I had. I was wondering why you guys chose iframes over other like technologies out there. So I guess it was this feature right here, the security part of it, and it being isolated.
Yeah, I think it's just the probably the safest and most common way to isolate code. I mean, it's debatable of how much isolation you can actually get on the web, but as far as leaking data goes, then, or kind of really manipulating the user's intent, hijacking, or kind of maybe even redirecting the page, stuff like that, that's essentially blocked by iframes, sandboxed iframes. That's the main reason. There are other exciting proposals around web standards that could be interesting in the future, but we're not there yet.
So I would just say that it's always a tension between isolation and customizability, right? If we just pass web components, maybe it would be the most customizable because the host can just put them wherever it wants. But it will also need to run the web component script in its domain, which is risky. So it's always a tension, and yeah, we chose the more isolated approach.
Thank you. Well said. We have another question from Discord. And they want to know, does the MCP-UI expect developers to build the components for Agentic UX and the normal web experience? Is this the same kind of interop?
Yeah. So the concept of MCP-UI is that the developers will be the one. I mean, developers as in Shopify developers or
the app developers.
Yeah, the app developers will be the one to build the UI for their own apps, and that will be the UI that you eventually see in every compatible host. That's an important distinction of it wouldn't be the host developers that are doing it. It wouldn't be Goose developers developing components. It would be vendor developers developing components.
Yeah, and that leads into the comment you made about how Shopify gets to keep its branding when we were selling the shoes and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I can mention one thing about like interop here, it's like on the left we have UI showing up in Goose, but on the right is a website it doesn't know anything about Goose in this context. The website itself here is like rendering UI inside of an iframe, but the idea here is that like me as the website author or the author of the MCPUI get to have control and ownership totally over the look and feel. So the presentation's on me to deliver, the behaviors are on me to deliver, and it may be that I do have a button in here that somehow can communicate with the host, and there's like an agreement there through the SDK. But I do think that we're in the state right now, like I like how Angie put it, like this is like some OG tech, right? Like HTML is like pretty awesome and declarative, and it helps to like do this sort of stuff. It's been interesting to think through like where things can go with more of the generative UI aspect of things. And I think there's a lot of people in our space right now working on solving this. I know there's some initiatives internally at Block trying to figure out like, what does this mean for design systems going forward?
Mm-hmm.
How do you interpret brand and taste, and like how do you like strike this balance between like the author having control over that stuff versus like the host like creating these like really tailored experiences that truly in some ways can be like localized to the person, the individual, right? It's more than just like translating the words, but like maybe they prefer like higher contrast. So like there's a lot of like interesting accessibility like unlocks here, I think, as well, that like it's really hard to get that right when we're building apps, right? And so if this could just be like handed off to the agent to deliver, it makes for some really great experiences.
But
sorry, go on. Go on. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. By the way, from the accessibility perspective, it's really perfect, because what's more accessible than an agent that knows you and builds the UI for your preferences? You don't need to rely on every web app in the world to support or build that. And I would say that another aspect of trying to embed UIs in one chat is that the host probably wants a streamlined experience as well. It's not just customizing it; it's also making it look similar, right? Whether it's an Airbnb snippet or a Shopify snippet or weather snippet, and that's exactly the things that we're exploring with MCP-UI, like how to balance between these needs of the identity of the provider, but also the look and feel of the host. These are exactly the things that we're working on.
Yeah, that is amazing, and also kind of led to the question I had next about the stakeholders and also the adoption for MCP-UI in general, like what goes into this. Because just from the conversation we've had so far, the stakeholders seem like, of course, you, the developers that continue to improve MCP-UI and provide the security considerations that are in there, the clients and agents that need to support MCP-UI, and of course, the developers that need to build MCP servers that will take advantage of MCP-UI. And at the same time, I don't know if this is relevant, but also the models that needs to process anything if required. And then at the end of the day, the users are using these agents and making decisions. And if you get to a point where they can customize this. So there seems to be like a few stakeholders in this entire process. But I'm wondering what from today to say maybe a few months down the line, what is adoption like from both like the developers end of things with Ido and Liad, and also starting with Goose, like what went into implementing or supporting MCP-UI in Goose, and what other MCP server developers or agent developers could look into to actually maximize this entire experience for everyone across the world. Who wants to go first?
I think Adam would do best to answer that.
You want me to jump in on there first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The doctor. I mean.
I mean, I take a step back here. Like I was really interested in the model context protocol, like when it was first coming out, and was just researching stuff about like what it meant and how it worked and all this stuff. And like I stumbled across this pretty amazing discussion issue on the specification opened up by Kent about new content type for UI. And I think this is where I stumbled across both of y'all chiming in, and also the idea of MCP-UI. And when it comes to like the Goose perspective on it, it's like super interesting topic. I think a lot of people agree and also like disagree on like how to approach it. And so the fact that y'all produce an SDK that like helped to like push the conversation forward, conform to the specification, was a real big value add in us just like putting something in place, because it's a little bit of like, instead of a chicken and the egg problem, it's like a goose and the egg problem, right? It's like, okay, like this is a cool idea. We need surface area to explore it, but like that doesn't exist. So it's like, now that there's surface area, we can start building demos. And I think like now that we have the ability to build demos, we start finding edge cases and like issues between like, how do we manage context? How do we deal with like success states and error states and all that stuff? And so like what we decided to do, instead of implementing the full SDK, was to go super small and minimal and just say like, let's get the very basic bare bones of MCP-UI in place, allow for rendering text, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript like blobs in an iframe, or allow rendering like a website in an iframe URL by following your client and server packages. And that's kind of just like where we're at now. And we're starting to explore more ways to like enable actions to be passed back and forth. So the demo that I was sharing today, the ability to kind of click through and go from one state to another state, like, just to be clear, that's not shipped in Goose yet, but like this is a preview build, but like we're trying to figure out ways to like sprinkle in a little bit more functionality and also support other rendering types like UI, remote DOM, to start figuring out, like, is this something that Goose needs or wants or keeps around? Because it's just a reminder, it's still experimental, and if server authors create things, we may change things without notice. So it's one of those things where it's bleeding edge, and I don't know if anyone knows how this is all going to land, but it's been interesting, and I don't think I would have been able to like make much progress internally at Block without like such rich conversation happening in open source around this topic, and then having like a really nice doc site to share internally that y'all put together. So that's been really helpful for us.
Yeah, I think you really captured the sense of this is a community-driven project. This is MCPUI is a playground. I mean, the few methods that we put out, it's external URL for the iframes, or it's raw HTML or remote DOM, they're experiments. Obviously, iframes are the easiest to adopt, but as we go along and more providers buy into it and expose their apps through MCP-UI, then we'll learn as well, and we'll develop new ways to do things and new delivery methods, and hopefully we can grow with the requirements and with where the tech is going, and kind of provide this ultimate experience for the user.
And what's really cool too, it's like we can use Goose as a proving grounds for agentic experiences, and like MCP is like such a like interesting protocol for interoperability, like not just between like MCPUI is like pushing for that with like websites and agents, but like the fact that we could have multiple agent like hosts out there, like if we all adopt a certain type of standard for MCPUI, that enables Shopify's, Square's, other companies out there to ship towards the standard and like meet their like users and customers where they are and where they're comfortable. Because like Goose as like a desktop agent, like has different, I guess, goals and objectives, let's say, than like maybe ChatGPT or Claude Desktop and those other agentic hosts out there. And so if we can have our UI show up across those different things, like I think that's just like it's a new surface area for like people to interact with companies and other people.
Yeah, I think like MCPUI is built on top of MCP standards, right? It's built on the embedded resource standard in the spec. We're not inventing something new in the MCP standard aspect. So it's really a specification that should be a convention, but it really, like you said, it unlocks this decoupling, like MCP decoupled the data between the providers and the agents, right? So MCPUI decouples the UI. Now, if we agree on this standard, which is really lean, if you look at it, it's not a big standard. Then yeah, Shopify can build once and it will be displayed everywhere, and Square can build once and display everywhere, and Goose can implement once and it will support all of the providers. So it becomes from an M times N problem to M plus N problem, right? So that's really that's a philosophy of this decoupling.
Yeah.
That's exciting. A question that I have now is like, do you guys have an idea of what kind of contributions you guys are looking for to push the needle more and make MCPUI more mainstream?
Yeah, I think we're at the point where it's less of a technical problem at this point and more of an adoption problem. I think we're just at that point. I mean, obviously there's a lot to do. There are more content types that, like I mentioned earlier, there's generative UI, there's kind of evolving needs that we see from other vendors like Shopify, asking maybe another kind of addition to the specification or another feature. But it's mostly just getting that requirement out there and solving real problems for real vendors. And I think the cool thing about this integration now with Goose is that now those apps have actually consumers to take that experience and kind of give it to them. So once we have that, then hopefully adoption will skyrocket, and we can actually see more and more of this and get those new requirements that would require a lot more working hands potentially.
Yeah, I also add that we have a Discord channel for collaborating on this, and obviously in the GitHub collaborating around it. And I think that the fact that Shopify launched MCP-UI support for all of their stores unlocks a lot of clients that want to implement, because commerce is a huge use case, and now every agent can build like a commerce flow using MCP-UI. So we're looking for like the adoption to get bigger, like Ido said. Yeah, and also the UI schema is probably going to get into the MCP spec as reserved for MCP-UI resources, which can be really big for the standard.
We have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, just another point on that. Then, aside from tech, there's also some more specification work to be done on MCP. So, for instance, capability negotiation, which is currently missing, is something that will be added. So, yeah, I think adoption plus specification is the next step.
Nice. So adoption and capability notification. That's what you said?
Negotiation. Like how does the host and server agree that they both know MCP-UI?
Okay, got it. Our next question we have, what are you looking forward to with supporting non-HTML UIs? Or what are your thoughts on supporting non-HTML UIs?
I mean,
so yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, it relates to what Ido said earlier, that we're also exploring that the MCP server will return some sort of an abstract descriptor or a structure, not just HTML, and then the host or the client can take it and translate it deterministically to its own set of components. And in that way, for example, the Shopify's MCP server will be able to return something that web agents and mobile agents will be able to render. So that's something that we're currently exploring. It's definitely, as agents are moving more to the native mobile parts, as these are the implementation that we're seeing, then that's definitely one direction that we're going through, like supporting this kind of abstract descriptors. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for that. But I think it'd be nice if we take a step back and explain what are non-HTML UIs. You got to comment on that too, and I'm a little.
I'll just say that what I was referring to. What I was referring to are like native UIs in mobile apps. These kind of things. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Actually, when you think about it, UI is not just graphical, right? So like in the future, you can imagine that these kind of responses can be even translated to somehow to voice user interfaces. So that's something that we can maybe think of later. It's basically just the MCP server saying, this is how I want human users to interact. This is like the interaction chunk that I'm sending you, the agent, and it can be graphical, it can be voice in the future, it can be whatever. It can even be textual if it's a textual agent.
I can go full circle from text to UI.
Yeah.
Love that. We had a comment about how they're waiting for VSCode support, and I saw that you guys had a PR open on VSCode, like the code extension for it. And I'm wondering, like, what would be the benefits of having it there?
I think VSCode is just one of those widely used hosts. I think they have like 20 million users.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I think almost everyone is one of them, especially developers and technical people. So I think it's one of those adoption phases we discussed of having yet another host with a slightly different maybe use case or a slightly different audience that would also be able to consume something like MCP-UI. Having it there would be amazing, because that's a kind of adoption that it would unlock, definitely.
Nice. Okay, let's see. We have a few more questions. So CLI support coming soon. Got it. Yep. Honestly, this has been really cool, and I love how we've been able to like kind of go full circle from like what, like you were saying, like the MCP client, what they would need in the MCP server. I actually want to play around with taking an existing MCP server and adding the MCPUI support to it. My question was, is that the smartest choice to do, or would it make sense to start from scratch with creating an MCP server with the MCPUI support functionality within it?
I would definitely take if you have a good remote MCP or just an MCP server, trying to augment UI resources on that. That's a good experiment. It's easier, and it also really shows that MCP-UI is an addition to MCP, right? There are additional resources. They don't replace the textual context, the textual content. So that can be really really interesting, way to do
I think something cool is that in Shopify's example, they're actually using the same tools with UI. So it's kind of it's just something that you can add on.
Yeah, and Ebony, I just want to show you real quick that this is a server that returns some text here, but in addition to that, I'm returning some content.
Resource.
Yeah, and you can kind of ignore this for now. I've been experimenting with annotations, and there may be times where we don't want to send like raw HTML to the LLM, but there's maybe times that we do. But anyways, yeah, this is like the magic sauce. This is from the server package, and it helps us make a beautiful object that it has to be just the right shape. But as long as you're using this in your tool response and you've got it loaded up in Goose, then Goose will be able to show it. Just a quick point though on support. We support text and HTML, text URI list. We're starting to chip away at remote DOM, but I think in the future, Liad and Ido, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we potentially will see more MIME type support. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that will be the enabler for us to like deliver maybe JSON or maybe a description where we start getting into more like abstract declarative UIs and maybe in the future just like a UI prompt where we can say, hey, here's what we want the host to render. And then based off of what the host has its capabilities, that's why that negotiation stuff is so important. Right. They can potentially just on the fly come up and present things that like are native looking for the host application itself.
Yeah. Just a quick question to cover, very similar to this as well. We've talked about also the PRs that we said, for example, to VSCode and other clients just implementing MCP-UI. For someone that is building an MCP server, like that developer side of things, what do they need to do, just for clarity's sake, to actually start to either give an MCP-UI component or actually render anything that could be used in any agent or client relative either to their application or even to the MCP server itself? What needs to happen on their side of things?
Yeah, I think Andrew's example here is perfect. Instead of you take your MCP tool and instead of returning the string, you return create MCP, create UI resource, and that kind of wraps everything for you. Behind the scenes, it's an embedded resource and everything, but the SDK kind of takes that burden away from you. So create UI resource, put in either, in this case, it's raw HTML, so you just put in your HTML. It can also be external URL, which is just give me a URL and I will render it in an iframe, which is probably the easiest way to kind of get into things. Take your existing component, your existing app, and kind of embed it. Probably the easiest way to start. And other stuff like remote DOM are much more complicated, so I think it's not a good starting point. But yeah, I think as we go forward and we add more and more MIME types, then it will grow. And I think one of the cool things here is that adding another way to render something is just adding another MIME type. It will be so simple that it's kind of what allows us to experiment so quickly and add more and more methods as people want to do other things.
Yeah, and also just to be super clear here, this is a function that returns HTML. So if you really want to get started very simply, you could basically just return a string here that says something like hello world. Or something like that, and that's how you can start baby stepping into this. I will say, like, as I've been building demos that like focus just on the raw HTML aspect of things, like it's been a little bit tough. I'm starting to think about like, do we need some sort of like build solution to make it easy to like bundle this stuff up? Should we be exploring things like Astro or static site type generators that basically can inline everything into a single string of HTML for us? So yeah, I think that I'm personally in this headspace of like, I just want to build demos and I want designers to see them. And like, I want to put enough infrastructure in place that designers can vibe code demos that can like help us like push boundaries further that like, sometimes we approach things technically, but like I think if we can lower the barrier further for exploration on this, I think it might be able to like, we may be able to like discover some really interesting conventions that we're not thinking about.
That's exactly the discussion that we're looking into in the Discord server, not just from developers, but also from everyone else that wants to implement that. So exactly what we're looking. That's why this playground exists, right? To understand the real use cases. Yeah.
That is brilliant. This is very exciting work. I think the possibilities are endless, especially as we have more MCP servers that cover different aspects of a user's experience. We've had demos for like shopping, for booking flights, hotels, food. Like it's just taking agentic AI now into all the space that we probably already bring them into, and then having them render the stuff visually. There was a comment I wanted to make earlier, but I entirely forgot. Just that flow of actually going to the UI, ordering the shoes, or what's it called, placing food order, is a different kind of immersiveness than if I was just reading through text on Goose. I don't know if anyone had that same experience, but I'm not the one operating it, but like just watching the screen, I also felt like a different level of immersiveness, and I'm very curious as to where that takes us going forward. It's really, really exciting. I'm just going to hand over to Ebony now, and then we can move to the next step.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part of what you said.
Oh yeah, I was asking. I was pointing out that we can. I think we've been almost at the top of the hour now. If you have anything else to add or any questions, and then we can wrap this up.
Do we have any final thoughts? Leah, thank you for being here. Do you have any final thoughts you'd love to share? I will share the Discord link again. Put that up.
Sure.
Andrew, yeah, go on.
So I think I think the important thing here is that MCPUI is a facilitator to this the vision that we have, and I think that like the emerging vision of the new web and the new UI, where websites are no longer the main way for us to consume content. So I think it's like an important thing to remember that we're now in this like inflection point where we get to really define how the web and how the UI is going to be in the future. So I really encourage everyone to get into the conversation, to get into implementation, to play around with it, because even if it feels bleeding edge right now, it's probably the general direction that the UI is going to. So that's the idea.
Yeah, get on the ground floor. So now is the time.
Get on in there. Andrew, are there any like open issues or anything like that you'd love people to hop on in and help out with when it comes to Goose finishing the adoption of MCP-UI?
I think from a Goose perspective, we need people to build demos. We need to see what's possible. We need people to say like, hey, why is this not working? We need to kick the tires. Like there's some weird things that happen when you start returning UI resources to agents, because there's like this thing called an agentic loop where like there's like an evaluation process of like, has the initial request been satisfied? And like, I don't fully understand how that works in Goose specifically, but there's a lot of smart people that do. And the more demos that we have built, the more things that people can record and ask questions about, I think it will allow us to like harden the product and make it better, and ultimately like build really cool new things. So my call to action is like, make MCP-UI demos. If you need help, reach out. I think we can make paths for deployment a little bit easier. Service providers like Netlify, Cloudflare, others like make it pretty easy to deploy remote servers. So once you kind of get over that hump and you figure out like how to get your UI to start returning to certain tool calls, the sky's the limit.
Thank you. Yeah. Any last words?
I think one of the things that it's been a pleasure working with Andrew and the team, and I think Goose is an amazing product, and I'm happy that we get to have it as a playground for something that we're building. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm excited to be on the forefront too with working with Goose. So I want to say thank you, audience. Thank you, chat. You guys have been amazing, asking great questions. Thank you, Ace. Let's bring you back up. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Ido. Thank you, Liad. I appreciate you all for being here. And I'm excited to keep seeing how the conversation grows with MCP-UI.
Thanks, Ebony.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Tech moves faster than the 24 hours we get in one day. Stop wasting your hours scrolling just trying to keep up.
Let your AI agent do it for you. Let's plug and play to find out how. Let's give Goose the commands it needs to connect to the dev.to MCP extension. Now, let's play. Hey Goose, fetch the 5 most recent JavaScript articles from dev.to, create a landing page for me. I want some clickable titles, 1-sentence summary, and a small project idea that I can use to practice after each article. In seconds, Goose delivered a ready-to-use landing page, clickable links to each article, summaries with actionable project ideas, and a top recommended read first section. Absolutely amazing. So save your hours for building, not scrolling. To get started, visit block.github.io/Goose.